Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C Squad. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January the 24th, 2020. Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, everybody's excited down here. We got something similar to football on Saturday and Sunday, so we're going to almost figure this out.
Yeah, we're going to try to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out a lot of things too, Big C. It's always great in the sports universe. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our national sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and you really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, do you think we're being uppity because now we're saying you got to be a smart TV to follow Big C Sports? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not that you got to be a smart TV. You got to be smart to operate a TV these days with all the different devices that they have, Charlton.
Yeah, gone are the days of saying on and off in channel 1, 2, or 3. It's all fair and love and war. We do want to give out our national suicide hotline number. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And get some help. And we know a lot of military veterans as well as civilians need that help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
It's an important number, Charlton, for American society when we think about the horrific disease that's called suicide that is gripping our nation and finding a way to cure that, Charlton. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is one of those segues to hopefully get people help. But they all need to have access to phone service to be able to reach out and hopefully get some help, to be able to speak to someone who cares, Charlton, who is not being judgmental. The National Suicide Hotline Prevention number is a lifesaver in America.
It really can help people, but you got to call the number 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And in the words of a great commercial that I heard when I was a young boy growing up, they will stand on their heads to make you a deal, but you really got to pick up the phone and call, and we wish everybody nothing but the best. We are one more weekend away from Super Bowl 54 in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Florida, in Hard Rock Stadium. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. And even with all the festivities going up to the Super Bowl, we do have a few other events that are going on. But the Super Bowl really is the entree, and then everybody else is looking for the appetizer. We'll talk more about that. Got some things going on in NBA basketball, especially down in Miami with the Clippers from LA. It's East Coast, West Coast. Really can't wait to see what happens with that event coming up. Also, Tiger Woods making some room for maybe another tournament championship down in Southern California. We see what happens with that. But I want to start on the other side of the earth, Big C, down in Australia. Number one, thoughts and prayers with all the firefighters from all over the world that have gone to Australia to help fight those horrible fires that are going on. Really can't offer you more than thoughts and prayers, but that's what we want to offer. On the brighter side of things, Australian Open, Coco Gauff, Naomi Osaka, two great women that are playing this game at a high level. What a future they have, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, right now they're the face of women tennis. When you think about Naomi Osaka, she was the defending Australian Open champion, being faced by Coco Gauff, the young 15-year-old sensation from Atlanta, Charlton. And last night, Coco Gauff became the youngest woman to ever defeat the defending champion in the Australia Open when she defeated Naomi Osaka. You got to understand, Coco Gauff is just 15 years old.
Yeah.
She doesn't even have driver's license. She has a driver's permit, so she can't drive around by herself. But the way she drives the tennis ball on the court, Charlton, she plays well beyond her years. And she seems to be the next sensation that we're going to be looking at for at least the next decade or more on the women's tennis circuit. But her feat last night, defeating Naomi Osaka, someone that she idolizes, Charlton, and who is not much older than her, but to have a 15-year-old potentially being the Grand Champion down under is a great feat for women's tennis and also African-American women.
Yeah, and I noticed, because I'm a person of color, I always make sure I pay attention to these things. I grew up watching Billie Jean King, and then Steffi Graf. I just seen so many, dominant tennis players. For the most part, they were always Caucasian because of some of the opportunity getting in there wasn't always made available to a lot of people. It wasn't because people did not have the money. Sometimes they were just ostracized. And this beautiful game that's been really brought to the forefront, I would say, over the last 2 decades by the great Venus and Serena Williams, seeing them do their thing. And now there seems to be a little bit of a changing of the guard. They planted some new seeds in the world of tennis, Big C, and those seeds are seeds of color. How long will that last in this kind of, I guess, this is kind of a pushback for diversity in tennis outside of some very elite women, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, as you think about Naomi Osaka, who has just graced over 20 years old, Charlton, and Coco Gauff being just 15 years old, you're talking about a run that can last 10 to 15 years of dominance, once again, of African-American women on the top of the tennis world. We know that Serena Williams is still competitive. Venus is still playing, and they're both in their mid-30s, Charlton, and they're out on the circuit every year.
Yeah.
But to have this young group of African-American women coming along, and Coco Gauff and Naomi Osaka, Charlton, this is great, and a great inspiration for many young girls of color to have a chance to know that they can dominate on the world stage. You think about Coco Gauff. Here it is. She can afford any kind of car in the world that she would want to buy.
Yeah.
But she can't get the driver's license to drive.
She needs a smart car, Big C, just like smart TVs. I hear some smart cars will drive themselves. I know Cadillac has that as well. There's a lot of other dealers. But think about this, because I still remember this book that I read when I was a young boy. It was by John Howard Griffith. It was called Black Like Me. And people might think, well, what is that about? People should really read that book. It showed this Caucasian man that went somewhat incognito or undercover in the South, and he darkened his skin color. And there were so many things that he was just told, no, you can't have it. You can't even sign up for it. And that's the ire that comes with that. I remember when I was a young boy, and this is bringing back some memories because she's 15 years old. When I was about 12 years old, where I grew up, they used to have what's called slip and slide in the summer times because it would get warm. And so a lot of kids of all different colors would show up and go to the slip and slide because it was keeping you cool. I remember there was a Caucasian man, and he told me and some other black boys, you guys can't get on the slip and slide. And first I thought he was joking because I grew up around diversity. But that good old boy was serious. And I said, if I can't get on, then I'm going to go tell my brother. And then my brother came over and said, if he can't get on, nobody's getting on. But I had to have someone stand up for me. So I know that stuff still goes on in tennis. So to see her doing what she's doing at 15 and I was 12, that brings back a lot of memories, but also a lot of hope. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, hope is always there, Charlton. It's what parenting does. And you think about the parents of Coco Gauff. They were both former collegiate athletes, and they steered their daughter in the right way. But as much as we look at athletes out there in society, Charlton, you have to look at the background that they come up in, and that's the number one thing as far as getting to the next level in anything you do. Being able to live your dream, to have somebody who wants to live your dream with you and backs you 100% of the way, and that's what the parents of Coco Gauff have done.
Yeah.
They have backed her dream, Charlton. They've stood behind her and let her aspire to whatever she wants to be.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I was talking to a friend of mine, football partner, colleague, and we were talking about Frank Gifford when he played at Bakersfield High School. The late Frank Gifford went on to do star work in broadcasting, also played for the USC Trojans and then the New York Giants, and he's a star player And there was a time when they were playing Stanford University, and Bob Mathias was playing at Stanford University, and they were just about a block or a tackle away from going to the Rose Bowl, and Frank Gifford was also a kicker. And he couldn't stop the tackle, and Stanford went on to the Rose Bowl, and USC didn't go in the 3 years that he was at the playing for the Trojans. But the reason I bring that up, Bixby, is because no one ever stopped Frank Gifford from playing football. No one ever told him you can't play. He came out of Bakersfield High School in Central California. I think they're the second winningest high school in high school football over California. But the fact that I draw that comparison with he and Coco Gauff is that I know that the late Frank Gifford never had anyone telling him you can't play, not because he wasn't good enough, but because he had the right skin color. So what message would you give? Because I don't want to be like other programs and assume this stuff doesn't go on, like my slip and slide story that I was told. What advice do you give to young people when they face that discrimination, and just because one or two make it, there's probably at least 30 or 40 that are just as good, but it doesn't line up for them, Bixie? Your thoughts?
But Charlton, it comes down to parenting. That's the advice that I give. It comes down to parenting. You can't expect a young person to go out there and pave the way.
Yeah.
When you have the right upbringing, when you have the right parental guidance in your life, and that's one of the things that a lot of kids haven't had, to have the economic opportunity. She had two parents that were working, that could provide the financial backing to get her into some elite tennis academies, and that's what it comes down to. Everybody's not going to be able to walk off the street and play whatever sport there is, regardless whether it's a team sport or basketball, baseball, football. It comes down to having financial backing and support to be able to do these things. So everybody's going to hear no in life, regardless of the culture that you're from.
Yeah.
It's about what you have in your background to help you overcome that. What support-based system do you have? I mean, no is a word that it only affects you if you let it affect you.
Yeah.
And if that's enough to make you stop, then you stop. But if you have a strong will and strong support base, Charlton, no means nothing.
Yeah, that's very true. Like a lot of kids say no, no, no. Eventually they do that. You have a bit of the ice cream cone if you're persistent enough. So congratulations to Coco Gauff. I hope she has many, many more days of success ahead of her. And think about that. Remember the young tennis superstar, I think the young tennis star that the name eludes me at this time, Gabbard, I believe. How she's just been on fire and letting everybody know that this gymnast, she's small in stature, but she's also very successful. And it's amazing how the world of color, if that makes any sense, once given the opportunity, is starting to take over, if that makes any sense. Your thoughts?
Well, color has always been a part of the world of sports, Charlton. It's just some sports that people have really felt that they did not want to participate in because it doesn't get that fanfare.
Yeah.
And so a lot of African Americans have stayed away from certain sports because it wasn't the fanfare that they looked for, like football and like basketball. When you look at the fall of African Americans participating in Major League Baseball, that's because they all want to play football now. Yeah. It's not because baseball has gone away. Yet you'd have a better opportunity of earning a living in baseball than you would in basketball or football. But, African Americans have been swayed by marketing. And that's something that they have to look at, take a step back, and understand. It's not about marketing because you're not going to have an opportunity to play percentage-wise professional sports in these arenas. But they're so enamored by FaceTime and who's following them through social media, Charlton, being able to get on a highlight show. You get on a highlight show quicker with a dunk than you do with a home run.
Yeah.
And that's what they look at. You get on a highlight show quicker with a touchdown catch than you do with robbing someone of a double, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, they've been short-sighted as far as how they, look at things prospectively, and that's what's cost a lot of African Americans opportunity. You think about the careers of tennis. Look at Coco Gauff. She's 15 years old.
Yeah.
And she's going to be dominating the world over the next 3 years in a sport that has been predominantly white.
Yeah.
But also, African Americans have had that opportunity. They just choose not to exercise it.
Yeah, and I meant to say Simone Biles also is a great gymnast that just set the world on fire. It's amazing how a lot of young women of color get to see more opportunities, and I just hope I think it's going to grow. Oftentimes, there's a lot of pushback that people don't see, just like Hollywood.
But see, Gabby Gifford, you got to look at Gabby Gifford led Simone Biles into being what she did. She used her as an inspiration. She was the first African-American woman to go into the Olympics for the U.S. and win the gold medal, Charlton. And this is what Simone Biles aspired to be, the next Gabby Gifford. She has done that and exceeded well beyond what she had ever done.
Yeah, so I wish those ladies just the best and just keep pressing forward and being a trailblazer for a lot of people that historically don't see images of themselves being that great, even though there were some out there. I want to go to the world of golf, Big C, the Farmers Insurance Open. The great Tiger Woods, he's -4 through the second round, tied for 17th. That means he does have some traction, going up the leaderboard over the weekend. Don't know if he's going to, overcome, but when you're only 6 behind going into the weekend, he made the cut. The influence as we go into 2020, I don't take this lightly. As we go into 2020, we had you could say a minority, win the World Series for the Washington Nationals. We had a minority quarterback, a person of color, in the Super Bowl. In the first Super Bowl in 2020, a person of color. Of course, the NBA is dominated by men of color. We have the best offensive coordinator in the NFL being Eric Bieniemy for the Kansas City Chiefs. Even though people don't talk about it, they say it's Andy Reid. We know it's Eric Bieniemy. Also, of course, college basketball, how we've had so many, different men that are like one and done, it seems. But it's just amazing at this time, going into 2020, in almost every major sport, you'll have men of color that are really leading in the world of athletics, where there were so many times before integration, none of that stuff happened. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, but see, that's 50 years ago. When we look at what has occurred in the last decade, even the last 2 decades, and you look at how African-American athletes have risen to the forefront in all sports. We just got through talking about tennis, and we think about the Williams sisters, who have always been on the top of the tennis circuit over the last 2 decades, Charlton.
Yeah.
We talked about golf, where Tiger Woods had risen to the elite status in that sport. And we've talked about tennis, where we've had Gabby Gifford and Simone Biles dominating that sport over the last 8 years as African-American women. We always know what football and basketball have done as far as athletes being African-Americans in their participation. The one sport that bothers me, like I said, is baseball. When I was a kid, and you look back in the 60s, Charlton, there were African-American faces all over every Major League Baseball roster.
Yeah.
You could sit there and fantasize about being one of these players. When you had your bat and glove, you talked about baseball. You didn't talk about the NFL. You didn't talk about the NBA. You talked about and aspired to be one of those great African-American baseball players. We talked about Curt Flood, who led the way to free agency that exists now in all professional sports, an African-American man. African-American baseball player who was the trailblazer for every other professional sport to set the template that they could have free agency. So when we think about where African-Americans have been and what African-Americans have let slip through their fingers, they had the opportunity to control Major League Baseball from an athletic perspective because they were better athletes than anybody, Charlton. So for some reason, they have given up that elite status of dominating a sport.
Well, that's very well said. I want you and I to come up with a Curt Flood Award as baseball starts off, coming up in a couple of weeks, Big C, the Curt Flood Award. And it won't be just for the guy who makes the most money, but for somebody who's doing a lot, behind the scenes in the world of baseball. Also, I'd love to come up with that. But going back to the Farmers Insurance Open, Torrey Pines, we have Palmer. He's -10. Snedeker's -8. And Holmes is -7. And so those top 4, those guys are going to be really pushing to win throughout the tournament, throughout the weekend. I would love to see Tiger get in there. Just because Tiger brought me into golf, I really didn't pay much attention. I saw Lee Trevino growing up, of course, the great Jack Nicklaus growing up. And also, when you hear about, all of the issues that stop a lot of people from getting that opportunity. I know Tiger doesn't really have the same kind of impact that maybe Michael Jordan had on basketball, but he may have more of an impact worldwide on the sport than any other person, irrespective of color. And you would think that more men of color would have gotten into the game of golf at the professional level, but it also takes insight, it takes sponsorship, it takes opportunity. Do you see the golf world growing, or will it be Tiger like a speed bump and then back to the normal thing? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, like I had stated earlier, young African-American kids are drawn to 2 sports. That's basketball and football. They think that that's the only opportunity in life as far as being a dominant athlete. I think one of the reasons why young African-American kids don't go into tennis, golf, and baseball the way that it used to be, Charlton, because it's all about one-on-one.
Yeah.
And in basketball, you can rely on teammates if you have vulnerability. In those sports, Charlton, it's more about you. When you're up at bat, it's you and a pitcher.
Yeah.
In golf, it's you, that stick, and that ball. In tennis, it's you, that racket, and the ball. So a lot of young African Americans don't see these as highlight sports. And I think that's a shortcoming of lack of parenting and lack of ingenuity as far as knowledge about what something can do to propel you professionally and on the mainstream stage. Because if you dominate one of those sports individually, as Tiger Woods did in golf, you're bigger than any football or basketball player on the planet. Then they all want to hang out with you. Every basketball player wanted to hang out with Tiger. Every football player wanted to hang out with Tiger, and baseball player, hockey players. They all wanted to hang out with Tiger because he was the biggest name in the world of sports. He was must-see television. When Tiger was playing golf 15 years ago, I don't care whatever you were doing on the weekend, you found a reason to find a television. You didn't have a smart TV, but you found a reason to find a television. More so than you did with any other thing. Since Tiger Woods, there's only been one other sporting event that would gravitate you to a television on a weekly basis when they were playing, and that was the Golden State Warriors. So when you think about what's big in sports, everybody wants grandiosity. That's what Tiger Woods brought, was grandiosity. The next person or thing to bring that was the Golden State Warriors. And as we've talked about the NBA numbers being down, they are down because the Golden State Warriors are irrelevant. The NBA has always had talent, but even in the greatest pool of talent, you need an individual or team that will make everybody take notice regardless of where you are in the country. Just like what we're seeing in the Super Bowl, the biggest sporting event in the world for one day. But they also got the best player in the NFL playing in that game this year, which will really give it huge numbers.
Well, I look forward to it. That tide is really opening doors. And what you mentioned about Tyler Perry also is about 2020. People believe in whatever they believe about starting fresh and starting new, and about recapturing your dreams and whatever made you drive forward and push forward. And now we see so many opportunities, like to follow the Yellow Brick Road. The road has been paved for a lot more people to see it, whether it's in motion pictures with Tyler Perry or Coco Gauff playing in the world of tennis. Of course, we could talk about Serena and Venus Williams. And then when it gets into baseball, Curt Flood, talking about him. A lot of guys making a lot of money because of what Curt Flood did. And speaking of Curt Flood, Big C, and the progress that people are making, I wish Tiger was the best and all the other great golfers down in Southern California. But as a person of color, I'm just looking at 2020, and it seems like there's so many different shades of skin color that you see now. Going back to the book, Black Like Me by John Howard Griffith, people can read that and understand really what I'm talking about. It talks about diversity in America, how we really need that. Major League Baseball, just a month away. I know the Mets have finally named their manager. There's still some talk with Los Angeles and Houston, how Houston allegedly, cheated the Dodgers in that World Series game. Even if you know somebody's going to tip on your pitchers, you still got to hit the ball when it comes over the plate. Nobody can tell you how to do that, even if you know it's coming. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But baseball, about a month away, spring training. Are people excited, or is it only a summertime thing that gets people excited? Big C, your thoughts?
The pure people who understand baseball, Charlton, baseball means more to a lot of people than any other sport. When you understand that game, the intricacies of baseball, everyone gets excited. You think about spring training where you're going to have an opportunity to see these players. Football has ended at that time, Charlton. The NBA is going down the home stretch. March Madness is about to begin. But baseball is something that has always resonated in people since they were kids. It's something that everybody played when they were little, regardless of your physical ability, Charlton. You were able to play baseball. And so as you think about how it attaches to so many people and they can identify with it, people get excited about spring training every year.
Yeah, they really do. And when you talk about baseball, starting around baseball too, think about this, Big C. We talk about basketball, and it's one and done. It's not like the days of the late Jerry Tarkanian, or even going back to Dean Smith and seeing how they would keep players, even though they had many one and dones. They had a lot of players that they were at least two and done. Big C, they played a little bit more than 1 year. We are less than 40 days away from March Madness in men's and women's basketball. You would think, you don't even think about it because football is still so dynamic. There's rarely the college basketball player that anybody knows about. I know what happened with the Kansas, which is just a really sad scene to see that. Hopefully they'll figure it out. Punish people, but give them a chance to come back and atone for their mistakes too. But 40 days away, less than 40 days away from March Madness, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as we look at college basketball and we think about March Madness, and we've had no less than 6 number one teams in the country in men's college basketball. It's been like a who's who of whatever week who's going to be number one. It's not like football where, you're going to stay there at number one if you get there, or number two. It's been a ping pong ball bouncing all over the place. And as we get ready for March Madness in less than 40 days, Dalton, what is going to be the scenario? Who is the overall favorite? In years past, you go into it and you have a clear-cut 2 or 3 teams that can actually go all the way. Right now, it's, as they call it, a turkey shoot down south right now. Who's the best teams in the country?
I feel bad for the turkeys. I always wondered how they got onto the dinner table. I didn't know the turkey shoot meant more than one thing. It's kind of sad for turkeys, Big C, but I understand people got to eat. And speaking of eating, the return of the rivalry between the UConn women's basketball program and the Lady Volunteers, from Tennessee. And what did it mean last night to you good old boys and gals down south, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you talk about an electrifying first half between the Lady Vols of Tennessee and the Lady Huskies of UConn. This was a rivalry that was born 25 years ago with the late Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma. This became a beef between these two coaches, and it was heated. And that intensity was taken out onto the court with those young ladies playing basketball. When you think about the rise of women's basketball in America, this was the dynamite that blew up, Charlton, that made women's basketball as exciting as what it is. And when you think about the legacy of the young ladies who played in this great rivalry, Charlton, some of the greatest names in lady college basketball, many Hall of Famers, many WNBA players, Charlton. And when these teams were playing, it was either, they were playing for the top seed in the country or a national championship for a decade. That's how heated and intense this rivalry was. The first half of this game, Charlton, lived up to all the billing. It would take you back 15 years to remember when these teams were battling each other. But the UConn Lady Huskies, knowing what they are, the number 2 team in the country, Charlton, proved that in the second half last night as they pulled away from the Lady Volunteers. But everyone in the crowd, Charlton, was reminiscing about 15 and 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's always great when you have the culmination of sports, men and women, getting the same type of credibility, especially when it comes to media and giving them the chance to showcase their talent on television as well as radio. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk more about football going up into the last weekend before Super Bowl 54. We'll take the Big C timeout. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the number one podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, also Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. As long as you have a smart TV, Big C, I don't mean to be insensitive, but why do you got to have a smart TV again, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, you got to have something that's more intelligent than you when you're watching it. The thing about a smart TV, that TV is sitting up watching you, gathering all your information, just like anything else.
Yeah, it really is. And there's a spy thing going on. Your phone is always listening to you. If you start mentioning certain things, you'll know because it will start advertising on your phone. So oftentimes, if you want to know what people are talking about, just meet with them over a cup of coffee And once they start talking what they've been talking about a lot or searching, it'll start running ads on their phone if you're close enough to see it. It's just a good thing. A friend of mine told me that trick is amazing. So when it comes to that, and we know Super Bowl 54 is about to kick off, and just another weekend, Big C, all this talk that leads me back to the movie, or the book actually, by John Howard Griffin. It's called Black Like Me. It was written by a white author, but the book's called Black Like Me. It chronicled the life of a Caucasian man. This is in the days of Jim Crow, when he went down south and tried to do everything as a white man was comfortable doing without resistance. He painted his skin black, or he changed his shade of color, and he met so much resistance. So today's question is, why, coming up on Super Bowl 54, are African-American quarterbacks always asked to take a discount to help the team? None other than the great Dak Prescott has been told to take a discount. Doug Williams threw 5 touchdown passes in a Super Bowl over John Elway's Denver Broncos. He should have been able to go to Disneyland, but he wasn't able to go. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is a question that has perplexed me, and I hear it all the time in mainstream media, is that they should give a home team discount, that they should be willing to take less. And I haven't heard anybody in the media saying that one of these high-paid white quarterbacks that did not make the playoffs should be willing to give back money and take a home team discount to help out the team so that the team could build. No one has said Matt Ryan should give any money back of his $155 million, Charlton, and the Falcons haven't made the playoffs in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
No one said Aaron Rodgers should have given back any of his money prior to this year, where the Packers had not made the playoffs in 2 years prior to that.
Yep.
And even your boy in Detroit, no one has said that Matthew Stafford needs to give some money back, and he's gotten 3 coaches fired, Charlton, off of his last contract, and is yet to make the playoffs. So as I look at that, and I constantly try to understand why white mainstream media keeps saying that African-American quarterbacks should be willing to take a home team discount to help out the team. Winning is not helping out the team. That's one of the things I've never understood, that they can be winners and they're not helping out the team. Because when Russell Wilson demanded a contract last year from the Seattle Seahawks, and he gave them a week to meet his criteria, otherwise he wasn't going to play.
Yeah.
The media was like, how dare this uppity black quarterback demand money from a team? He's just a quarterback who's only been to 2 Super Bowls and won 1. And yet white quarterbacks who've never been there are making more money than him, and they were higher draft picks. And Russell Wilson has never had a losing season in his NFL career. Prior to this, it was 7 consecutive, and after this, it was 8 consecutive winning season as a quarterback. And yet those quarterbacks that weren't making more money than him, Charlton, could not make that a claim. And now we have 3 African-American quarterbacks, really 2 African-American quarterbacks, make it 3. 3 African quarterbacks, 4. I'm going 4. I could keep saying, I got to stop saying African-American quarterbacks. We got 4 of them. When you talk about Dak Prescott, he's on the clock right now to be signed. They have to make a decision on him how much money he's going to get.
Yeah.
And everybody's saying, well, he's not a franchise quarterback, even though he's won so many games over the last 3 years. And everybody's saying, well, he still hasn't proven that he can win, even though he's 13-3 one season, Charlton, as a rookie.
Yeah.
But as we look at that, the money that they give, Dak Prescott, they're going to have to give even more to Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson next year, Charlton. Deshaun Watson is going to command more money than Dak Prescott. With Patrick Mahomes, it's not even about negotiating with him. What they should do is just say, Patrick Mahomes and his representative should walk in and put a number down, and whatever it is, the Chiefs going to say, we can work with that.
Lee Steinberg,
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
We can work with that.
Yeah.
And that'll be over $40 million. But it really pisses off mainstream media, because mainstream media is white. And here it is, as they've pushed as many white quarterbacks as they could throughout the history of the NFL,
to the top. Now
they have to stand behind these black quarterbacks that are the trailblazers and the new face of the league, Charlton.
Yeah, the book, John Howard Griffith, Black Like Me. I think the only way you overcome, we just got through celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the holiday and his birthday, and everybody understands it's nice to say we shall overcome, but really money is the determining factor to what kind of life you live, what your zip code is, how your kids can go to school, how long you live, because if you have money, you can buy health care. Without money, you can't buy health care. I mean, there's so many things. It determines what you can do for the creature comforts in life. You can get an education. You can get so many things with money, and oftentimes there's a pushback. And I want to make that change through Big C Sports. I'm not waiting for somebody else to do it and saying they won't let us have nothing. I love having dialogue. It's going to take everybody who's fair to just put together a bargaining chip, which is called fairness, and give people the chance to earn their money. And speaking of earning money, well, you don't need to be fair, Big C. The 5 biggest Super Bowl bets so far. Number 1, it's like chump change. It almost is chump change in the world of sports nowadays. For the mainstream people, it's not. $684,000 on the 49ers. Somebody put that down, Big C. That's not a lot of money if you're coming from Silicon Valley, Big C. There's so many billionaires down there. Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, when you think about that, that's somebody in Las Vegas laying that bet on the 49ers. And that's the type of bets we get during the Super Bowl. $684,000 plus 2.
Yeah.
They got a 2 points laying over, about two-thirds of $1 million on the 49ers. They were able to get 2 points in the sports book in Las Vegas. And that's not a bad payday. They put down that much money, Charleston. They would get a $500,000 payout on that 625. So, I mean, it's not a far-fetched thing when we think about the Super Bowl and the amount of money that's put out there and what it means to people.
Yeah, and I hear he laid it down in nickels and dimes. It took a long time to get that money. I'm not saying if it's a famous boxer down there from the Desert Big Z. And then, number 2, $187,000 on the San Francisco 49ers money line. Now, think about this. The Chiefs are favored by 1. I don't think it's going to be a one-point game. It's going to be at least a touchdown by whoever wins. But Las Vegas would do better for people, picking the Niners, because if you bet on the Chiefs, you don't really cover anything, so they can only make money on the Chiefs with the point spread. If they bet the Niners way, that's how they can win. That's why a lot of money is pouring in. $187,000 on the 49ers is the money line. The $150,000 on the Kansas City Chiefs is their money line. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the 49ers money line, it pay you $1.25 for every $1 that you bet, Charlton. So it is an opportunity to make money on that. If you look at the Chiefs money line, it's 1.75 on every dollar that you bet. So you make money. It depends on how you place a bet on a game. The money line is a lot different than betting the spread.
Yeah.
The money line gives you a higher payout on a bet. But when you think about the copious amounts of these bets that are being made, Charlton, I mean, this is grandiose money.
Yeah, it really is. I can tell you done got yourself one of them there smart TVs, Big C, from one of my good old Southern boys telling me good old smart TVs helped him make some money too. $100,000 is the number 5 prize on the 49ers money line. But the number 4, I want to come back to that later. But $100,000, somebody's in the neat little help to raise some money if they can only put down $100,000 for big rollers anyway, Big C. Number 4. $110,000 on the Super Bowl 54, going over 52.5 points. I don't know where they get the half from, but this game will be over 52.5 points because both teams can score offensively. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, and that's the uniqueness about the bets for the Super Bowl. There'll be over 100 type of prop bets that you can lay on the Super Bowl. You're going to get the money line. You got the over-under, Charlton. You got people betting the spread. In every type of way you can lay a bet on the Super Bowl, which is what makes the game exciting. But as you look at these individuals walking in, laying these bets, these 6-figure bets, Charlton, and they don't win. It's like an NFL owner signing someone to a $100 million contract.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, is that enough? And that's what you get when someone goes into a sports book with that type of money and opens up that briefcase, and they got to bring out someone to count it.
This all, and what they're doing in nickels and dimes. There's a movie out right now about a good old boy, and they run in numbers, and they got a famous NBA basketball player, former basketball player in there too. I'm not doing a promotion for the movie because they're not telling me to, but I just want to say it's out there, and it kind of coincides with the Super Bowl happening right now. So we wish everybody well. Don't spend more than you can lose. If someone can lose $680,000, Big C, they're doing pretty good. I'm sure they probably have a smart TV in their home. And another good old boy that can go down to Vegas and lay some money on the line also is LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. Big C, they gave Ed Orgeron a nice contract, a massive contract extension only because he went 15-0 at LSU and won a national championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is something that's long overdue for Ed Ogeron. When you think about how he's gotten to run around at a few different universities, things didn't work out when he originally went down to Mississippi over a decade ago, Charlton, and just didn't have his coaching shoes on properly and tried to control too many things. He went on to become an interim coach at USC, Charlton, and they felt that he wasn't the type of personality that they wanted out there to smooth out with the boosters and the alumni, Charlton. He went on to LSU as an assistant and became an interim coach out there also.
Yeah.
After Les Miles was let go. But they felt good about what he could bring to the program and took that interim title off of him, Charlton. And 2 years later, he rewarded the program since their first national championship since 1957. And so in doing that, Charlton, LSU, and you give them all the praise in the world for locking Coach Ogeron up with a 6-year massive deal for $42 million, Charlton. A 6-year extension he received today with $42 million on the back end of that, Charlton. So congratulations, Coach Ogeron, on your national championship and undefeated season.
Yeah.
And the $47 million you can go crawdadding with.
You can go crawdadding with, but he's still about $30 million under the cap of what they give that good old boy down in Texas A&M. Is it Jimbo Fisher? He might be giving Ed Ogeron a loan, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, you think about where he came from, Charlton. That just 2 years ago, he was not a head coach.
Yeah.
So when you think about the money that Ed Ogeron has gotten in his contract extension, that is the quickest to $42 million, Charlton, on any college campus.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and we know we talk about guys like, of course, you know, out here on the West Coast, Kelly down there at UCLA, could he turn the program around? And we know David Shaw up at Stanford, he's well paid at Stanford, but he, you know, hasn't won a national championship like LSU has. And of course, you look at your good old boy Nick Saban. He's making more Aflac commercials. I guess he needs more smart TVs too. That's why he has a part-time job selling Aflac commercials, big fee. And then Dabo Swinney, of course, he's in the thick of things. Jim Harbaugh, will he stay? Will he go? You know, will other coaches come back into the world of college football because the money's so big? I wish them all the best. Did you realize that the Senior Bowl is playing tomorrow in Mobile, Alabama, of all places? You would think it would be maybe in another market, Big C, but Mobile for the Senior Bowl, I'm looking for all the guys who have hopes of going to the next level to have their moment to shine, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this game in Mobile, Alabama has been synonymous with that city for decades,
Yep.
Charlton. And it has catapulted many unknown college players to NFL stardom over the years. This is a chance where a lot of kids from smaller schools get a chance to play against the boys from the big schools, Charlton, and show their mettle. And this has catapulted, like I said, many guys draft stock and risen up the board, having great days in the Senior Bowl. Khalil Mack was one of those players, Charlton,
Yeah.
and many others. Dot Davenport down in New Orleans, the defensive end, playing in the Senior Bowl and showing that they can hold their mettle against the Power 5 conference kids, Charlton, can make you millions of dollars.
It can make them millions of dollars, and it's just about seeing. I mean, what I love, that I was used to see it when I was also covering the high school football scene in California about 20 years ago. They would have the Texas All-Stars versus the California All-Stars. They would play it down in Southern California at Cal State Fullerton. And you also see this happen in college football. They'll take players, the logos on the side of their helmets, and they'll swap it with different players from different teams. And it always adds to the fun and the brotherhood that a lot of those young athletes have, hoping to get to the next level. But don't look now, Big C. The Pro Bowl is here. I miss the days that they held it after the Super Bowl, and when they held it in Hawaii over on the island, it seemed to be more celebrated then, but now they have it down, I believe, in Orlando. And I want to get your thoughts. Do you like it more on the mainland, or when people can make a special trip and go over to Hawaii, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, Hawaii seemed for years to be synonymous with the Pro Bowl. I mean, it was a great vacation at the end of the season for many players, whether you were playing or just following your companions over there, your teammates, and watching that and vacationing with the family. I have many fond memories of going over there during that time, Charlton. But it just doesn't seem right that it's played. Well, I don't even know if you can call it playing, Charlton.
Yes,
it's being practiced in
Yeah.
Orlando and a week before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because it's anticlimactic because, all the notoriety and the push and emphasis, media attention is going towards the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is 9 days away from today. It'll be a kickoff at 6:05 or whatever in Miami. But yet you have this Pro Bowl practice because it's not a game anymore.
No,
it's an exhibition. We think that the NBA All-Star game is an exhibition. This is beyond exhibition because nobody's going to hit anybody and nobody's going to tackle anybody. And I think that the fans in Orlando, because they have an opportunity to see so much football, whether it's college and professional, in that general area, Charlton, and the Super Bowl is going to be in Florida also, is that you lose a lot of the luster and the appreciation that you got from the fans over in Honolulu.
Yeah, I think that's true, too. But it's just another way to showcase the talent and the players and give them appreciation. I do miss the fact that players who are actually in the Super Bowl cannot participate in that. That's one of the things that I miss also. Today, officially, Big C, the great Eli Manning decided to hold his press conference. And Eli Manning announced retirement today after 16 seasons, two-time Super Bowl champion with the New York Giants, played his whole career with one team. I know he turned down the chance to play for the San Diego Chargers at that time. Didn't want to do it. He held out, and I guess he got what he wanted. He got 16 years to play on the Big Apple. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, an illustrious career in many ways, a two-time Super Bowl champion. The knock on his career, Charlton, is he going to be a Hall of Famer? He's only a 500 quarterback on his career, which 500 generally does not get quarterbacks into the NFL Hall of Fame. There are two quarterbacks in the NFL Hall of Fame with sub-500 records. Joe Namath with one Super Bowl victory, and Sonny Jurgensen without a Super Bowl victory at all, but an appearance in that 1972 season with the Washington Redskins against the perfect Miami Dolphins. So as you look at Eli Manning, and he's the last quarterback, he's the first quarterback out of his draft class that was a number one draft pick to retire from the NFL. He is only one of two of them, Charlton, to have won the Lombardi Trophy. Ben Roethlisberger won it. Phillip Rivers has never gotten a chance to go to the Super Bowl, Charlton. So overall, when you look at his career, he's going to be on the fence. When it comes down to Hall of Fame, there's going to be a lot of people say he deserves it because he played in New York, and his name is Manning. But it's going to come down to the pollsters in the end. Yeah,
it will always come down. But I appreciate the fact that not only he, but his dad, his brother, made a big name in the world of NFL football. Coming out of the SEC also, I'm sure that's even more important for the people who are down south. And I really just want to say congratulations to Eli. I know he was been through a lot of winning in New York, where none of the Jets can say that outside of Broadway Joe. I want to take the time. I know we talked about the All-Stars, the college football All-Stars that are gathering around and swapping logos from different helmets and hoping that they can all have their chance at the next level. Thinking about players from FCS rosters from 2019 and in all of the conferences outside of the country, all over the country that are trying, to get together winning programs. We talked about Ed Orgeron getting that contract, Big C, and he's there to do two things: recruit and win football games, Big C, and that's nothing to be taken too lightly. So where do players go and where they come from? I know everybody has their own opinion about do we have enough bowl games or too many bowl games, but I think whenever we have the chance to have more, I think more is always better. But when I look at the conferences and the players on NFL rosters for this 2019 season that we just got through, I know this will make you a little bit happy, Big C, but the conferences that has the most players in the NFL right now, the SEC, 339 players played at SEC schools. The Big Ten has 253 players that played at Big Ten schools and that are playing in the NFL. The ACC, 215 players that are playing on NFL roster 2019. The Pac-12 has 189 players that are playing on NFL rosters, and then the Big 12, 131 players that are playing on NFL rosters. And there's a lot of conferences out there, but the latest number is the American Conference with 100 players that have made NFL rosters. It's not always easy to make the NFL, but a lot have come from the SEC. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the landscape of college football and where the predominant Power 5 conferences are, they lead the way to the NFL, and that's why there's such an exodus from all over the country with the elite high school players wanting to play in the SEC. They do this because of media searches now, Charlton, that you can Google whatever. These kids understand that their best opportunity to get to the NFL, their ultimate goal, is to play in the SEC. We talked about the top 7 quarterbacks in the state of California all making an exodus heading down south to play. And that's the major reason why. When you look at that opportunity, as we talked about at the beginning of the show in tennis, having opportunity, being put in that position, that's the best place to go to be put in that position.
And that's something that's undeniable when you look at the active rosters of NFL players right now out of the FBS schools. Number 1 is Alabama. They have 56 players that are active on NFL rosters. Number 2, Ohio State Buckeyes with 45 players active on NFL rosters. Number 3, Florida with 35 players. Miami has 34 players active in the NFL. LSU, defending national champions coming up in the next year, they have 32 players that are active on NFL rosters. Florida State has 32 active players. Oklahoma, 31 active players, followed by Georgia with 29, Penn State 28, Texas A&M 28, and then Clemson has 27 active players on NFL rosters. Just a couple of more teams, Big C. Wisconsin, 26 active NFL players. Auburn, 25, actually 26 active NFL players. The most active NFL players from the Pac-12 conference happens to be the hardest academic school to get in, Big C, more than any other news of the teams that I just named off. That's Stanford. The great Stanford University has 25 active NFL players on their rosters, followed by Notre Dame with 25, the University of Washington also with 25. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's one of your things you talked about, Charlton, when you said, what is it going to take for the Pac-12 to be competitive? Well, when those players see that by going to a Pac-12 school, it's not going to give them an opportunity to fulfill their ultimate dream. And the academic standards of getting into Stanford, and that's the reason why Stanford leads that conference in NFL players, is because NFL brain trusts know that you're pulling out a brain when you get to Stanford, because they have to be academically qualified, not athletically qualified, to get a scholarship at Stanford. So that they're going to be able to process whatever material you have in the NFL.
Well, I just think a lot has to do with where people go. It's very expensive to live in California. One thing that I will mention, California is more expensive to live than any of those other states or cities that we've mentioned too. Just a couple of other names before I get your thoughts on the NFL. Super Bowl 54 coming up, how players should behave. I know a lot of the teams, well, both teams are heading down there probably on Sunday. On that list also is Tennessee with 24, Michigan 24, Iowa 24, South Carolina 24, UCLA has 23 on that roster. And so we wish everybody the best as they look for the chance to play NFL football. I want to close out tonight, Big C. There's some big NBA basketball going on in the game of basketball tonight. I just really appreciate when we talk about schedules. We have the Miami Heat. They're 20-1 at home. They're taking on the LA Clippers. That should be a big game down in Miami. I'm not going to say a preview of the NBA Finals, but it could be, because Miami, they're playing well enough to be one of the top 2 seeds in the Eastern Conference. And we know the Clippers, even though they may rest players, they'll be at the top of the heap also in the West. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as you look at the Miami Heat and the season that they're having, Charlton, I also think that Indiana will be one of the top teams in the East, and I would not be surprised to see Indiana and Miami in the Eastern Final. I know everyone looks at Milwaukee. Philadelphia is sliding way down the pole, Charlton. Boston is always going to be in the thick of things. But I like, with the addition of Jimmy Butler down in Miami, how he's brought all those young players together. And the Clippers, the jury's still out on the Clippers. I mean, this is a team that's heavy on load management, and they really haven't struck the fear in people thinking that they were going to be the dominant team in the Western Conference.
Yeah, they'll find a way to be in the thick of things. The great Doc Rivers. Tonight's schedule, Friday, January 24th, Memphis at Detroit, Boston at Orlando, Toronto is at the New York Knicks, Sacramento Kings at the Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks at the OKC Thunder, playing pretty decent basketball of late, Houston at Minnesota, Denver's at New Orleans. Zion gets a second chance to really get the people riled up down in New Orleans. LA Clippers at Miami, as we talked about. Phoenix is at San Antonio, and Indiana is at the Golden State Warriors. Also, they mentioned so many things about the All-Star game. The rosters coming out for the West is LeBron James, James Harden, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, and Luka Doncic. For the East, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kemba Walker, Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam, and Trae Young. So we wish everybody well with that. I want to tell you, you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and again, a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the growth with Big C Sports. As we come to a conclusion, I know players talk about don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything dumb. How do you tell a guy that may have $20, $30 million in the bank, not even 30 years old, going down to Miami, where South Beach is absolutely amazing. It's electric, Big C. I think you know what I'm talking about. How do you keep guys out of trouble? The Raiders were always in trouble when they were going to Super Bowls, Big C. Your thoughts?
But, what do you equate as trouble for an NFL player, Charlton? I mean, when you go down and you're in the Super Bowl, you're going to have a couple days to have fun. The coaches release the reins on you until 2 nights before the game. I mean, these players have traveled throughout their career from city to city in the NFL, so Miami is going to be no different from any other mega city that they've gone to in the NFL. You're going to go and enjoy yourself. You're going to take in the festivities. You're going to take in the city. But as a player in this day and age, and social media is following you everywhere, you know how to maintain yourself, and you're not going to put yourself in any peril or harm's way.
Yeah, we hope that is the case. You know, defenses have won, I think, in the last 20 Super Bowls. The team with the top defense has won. I think they're 5 or 15-5. And that leads to San Francisco with a little bit better defense than Kansas City, at least on paper, Big C. But there's also something that I don't think people have pulled the stat on. Defenses do better than offenses, of course, when it comes to these games. But what hasn't been in that 20 years that they've studied this is how a dynamic quarterback can really break down your defense and make it even more stressful to do what they've done over the last 15 to 20 years. Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I think when you look at the last 15, 20 years of the Super Bowl, Charlton, it's come down to the team that has scored the most points in all of those Super Bowls that have walked away with a win.
Yeah. Unless you're in Las Vegas, sometime shenanigans going to. I really hope that we don't see any shenanigans. I know that players are going to go down and get rested up. They're going to have a good time. This is where a lot of people dream of. I wish people the best with the Senior Bowl coming up in Mobile, Alabama. I hope that everybody stays healthy. The Pro Bowl, man, start playing it again after the Super Bowl so some of the guys in the Super Bowl that earned the Pro Bowl status can also participate. I think that would be the right thing to do. I want to ask you one more question. What's a great meal at Big C's restaurants down south? Do you guys have anything special that you're doing to those piglets that you guys serve up down south, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Super Bowl, Charlton, you think about carnivorism. And prime rib is always the elite meat to have during Super Bowl time, Charlton. A nice medium rare prime rib with a nice glass of Cabernet. You can't beat that.
Can't beat that, Big C. And I hope that people also don't drink and drive. I know that's something that we hear all the time. But please, you have your whole life ahead of you, don't drink and drive. And we hope that you'll all have fun leading up to Super Bowl 54. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
What I'm looking forward to, Charlton, is the Australian Open on the women's side and the changing of the guard. Serena Williams lost last night in the third round, but Coco Gauff won last night in the third round. The youngest woman ever to win in the third round against the defending champion.
Yeah.
We're looking at the future of women's tennis between Naomi Osaka and Coco Gauff. And African-American women, once again, will be on the top of the scale of women's golf, of women's tennis in the world, Charlton.
And you can be on top, too. We wish everybody health, wealth, and wisdom every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.